welcome to a very special edition of Koktail Conversations with Khun Anand Panyarachun, 2 times Prime Minister of Thailand in the 1990s. Prior to that, a very distinguished diplomatic career as ambassador to the United Nations, to Canada, Germany, the United States, and then on to a business career where he had similar success. We're very lucky to have him with us this evening to talk about his life, 2 of his books, and perhaps a lot more of his thoughts on what the young people of Thailand should be doing today to help make Thailand live up to its true potential. So with that, Khun Anand, welcome. You were born, I believe, in 1932, which coincides with the modern democracy era of Thailand. And I just wanted to ask you the first question. Do you feel, how do you feel you are now compared to, say, your business days, your political days, your diplomatic days? Have your views on life become more or less radical, do you think?
Well, I never thought myself as a radical.
Okay.
Perhaps a little unorthodox or unconventional. Yes, some of my views may be viewed as radical, but not in general terms. I mean, in spite of the varied careers I had in my life, and despite the ups and downs of my destiny, basically, I don't think I have changed much. Yes, I have become less emotional. I have become more warm-hearted. I used to be very frank, very honest, and very straightforward. And I didn't suffer for fools. So as you grow older, I think it's a natural process that you mellow down,
Okay.
and you, without knowing, but rather consciously, and I think that on the whole, as I grow older, I have become a better and a wiser man.
So being a wiser man and looking back to your younger days, there's quite a movement here in Thailand now around young people expressing themselves and wishing to see the Thailand they want to see in the future. What wise words would you offer to people in maybe in their late teens or their up to the mid or late 20s, wanting to have a greater say in the way they?
Well, I never view this habitual change or character change as something which is unique. I think it happens in every country. The only difference is the speed with which it is carried on. As you have lived in Thailand for quite some time, that basically Thailand is a conservative party, a conservative in the sense that they keep to the traditions, they keep to the rituals, they keep to the old beliefs, and their mindset is very difficult to change. That's one thing. And I think because of our educational roots, which were based on rote thinking, learning by rote, we all along we have become less critical of matters than the children in the Western world. Thailand is in a way is a classless society, but I say it is more like a hierarchical society. We don't make distinction between races or ethnicity or religion, but I think ranking is somehow still something which matters to a number of people. I welcome the change in that occurred to the youth. I think that it's time that they start to think for themselves. They can be unorthodox, they can be unconventional.
Right.
But of course within limits. And I would not say within legal limits, because I don't believe that our laws are that fair. But I think within, they have to be more, they have to be sensible too. And while they want to rush things, they have to know that certain things in our life do not move as fast as we would wish, or do not happen as fast So I think that they have to try to maintain the old value of our system, that is tolerance. So on the downside, I hope that they can be critical, they can be forward-looking, they can be non-orthodox, they can be challenging authorities or whatnot. But I think they should never forget that tolerance is also a characteristic that matters very much in our life, and patience.
The current government it's been a stable government, at least you can say, for the last
stable
years.
In the sense that it keeps peace, because it is in a position to exercise authority with only certain limits.
Right.
They maintain peace not by rule of law, but rule by law.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I mean, the elections are just around the corner, and which it's great to see they're coming. And do you see? I guess the question would be: the young of Thailand going to have an influence on? They don't seem to me to be wanting to vote the same way as their parents voted, so there could be this kind of feeling that the parties that appeal to the younger will do quite well in the next election. Now let me ask you a question about the older people. Do you think it's time for them to, maybe the military government as well, to step aside a little bit more and allow more freedom? And
I think the older generation, it's not only a matter of age, because some young people can have very, very old mindset. But I think the old mindset still exists to a large extent.
Yeah.
But of course, the younger mindset, or what I may refer to as the progressive mindset, has been creeping up quite rapidly.
Yeah.
And I think that the speculation is that in the next election, unlike in the past, let's say pre-Thaksin days, when the issues were personalities, you either like him or do not like him because he's nice and kind, or he is. But I think that in the last 20 years or so, 15 years, Thai politics has changed for the better, in the sense that more and more people focus on the issues and focus on matters which affect the well-being and the wellness of the people. Perhaps not to the extent that we would like to see, but at least it's a change in the positive direction. Whether we have gone far enough in that direction, I'm doubtful, because apart from the basic conservative values held by many Thais, quite a number of our people in authority have this habit of hanging on to power.
A little too long.
And when Churchill said power corrupts,
absolutely.
Absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, to be fair to the generals, I don't think Thailand had ever been a dictatorship in the normal sense of the word.
Yeah.
We didn't have secret police or.
No, I mean, if you look around their neighbors,
or intelligence sources spying on the behavior of the individuals, or too strict on the dress code, or on the. In a way, it's a fairly open society.
Yeah.
But whenever there is some sort of an issue between the younger generation and the government, I think the error is that they try to put these people in jail.
Yeah.
That's the only thing. But there's no torture. There's no sort of arbitrary execution.
Which is a good thing.
Well, we think we're lucky.
Let me get off of politics and talk about, you talked about the Thai laws, and one of the laws that you've had, I saw you had a comment on in the last maybe 1 or 2 years, was the Less Majestic Law.
As far as I recall, I did say some 10 years ago
Okay.
In fact, I was the first one to make any comment on Article 112 publicly. That was about 10 or 11 years ago.
Right, right.
What I said then was that I can understand the existence of the law. And in many kingdoms, that type of law also existed.
Right.
And definitely, gradually, in the other kingdoms, either the law was rarely exercised or used, or the law's punishment was not harsh. But I think in our case, I think there is a validity in the existence of the law. But if you want to be critical of the law, you really have to analyze what the law says. And as far as I remember, I think the law says that there are only four personalities who come under this law.
Right.
The king, the queen, the crown prince, and the regent. So this law applies only to 4 individuals. The king is head of state, the queen is his wife, the crown prince is the next head of state, and the regent who is acting as when the king is too young or whatever. So I can understand that, because and the reason being that if you allow full freedom to be critical of them, in a way you can be unfair to them because they cannot reply.
I see. Yeah.
The palace or the king would never respond to any criticism. And I happened to serve the King Raman IX, and he even came up publicly in one of his fireside statements that every time this law was invoked, they put him in trouble.
Right.
So I think, well, all right, if you accept that, yes, that it can exist, but the exercise of which have to be changed. And there are 3 points. One, it applies only to the 4. It doesn't include the president of Privy Council. It doesn't include prime ministers or cabinet ministers. Okay? That has to stand as it is.
Yeah.
The first change would have to be who executes that law. Because at the moment, as it is written down, any Tom, Dick, and Harry can go to the police station and file a complaint that he or she did make a statement or did do something which should come under 112.
Right.
Now that is the filing of the notice. It's left to the police station, be it a sergeant or lieutenant or captain on duty, to accept the charge and to consider whether the charge is valid under the law.
Right.
No, that's unfair to the policeman.
Yeah.
It is a legal question. Yes, some of them may have studied law, but they don't have authority to interpret this type of law. So what they do is they pass on to the upper, from sergeant to lieutenant to captain to colonel, head of police station, and they pass on to the Attorney General's office, to middle-ranking member of the Attorney General's office up to the Attorney General. They have to play it safe.
Right, right.
Because if they don't pass it on, or if somebody stops it and says that this is nonsense, he can subsequently be accused of negligence of duty under another law.
Right.
So, everyone is put into a very, very risky position. And so I said, well, there has to be some kind of a system that somebody has to take responsibility in deciding whether that case is valid or not, whether it can be substantiated, whether it has sufficient evidence. But if you leave it to the matter to the natural cause of action, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
So I said, well, the person that should take that responsibility should be a person with political responsibility. It could be the Attorney General, it could be Minister of Interior, or it could be somebody else.
Right.
And he is the one. So I think with that kind of procedure, the exercise of the law would become more credible. That it doesn't become automatic just because
Just
somebody
someone made a complaint.
files notice. The second change that needs to be looked into is that these laws are criminal law. This 112.
Yeah.
It should not be a criminal law. It should be just a tort or whatever. Instead of imposing jail penalty, you can impose a fine. But of course, due to the position of the four personalities, if it's to remain a criminal law, the present punishment is too harsh. 3 years up to 15 years. To me, that is absurd. It could be 3 months or 6 months or suspended or whatever. Because even in the libel law, you don't actually go into criminal course. It's a what do you call? It's a civil law.
Right.
So I think these are the changes that first of all, I can see the validity of the existence, and I can see the validity of differentiating the four persons from the rest of the country. But as it is written, there need to be some changes.
Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that. Looking at the development of Thailand's economy and its business, which is obviously the more economic growth there is, it does seem to be trickling down into a wider population. But there is, in my view, and I'd love to get your opinion on this, there seems to be a concentration of the power of business into just a few family hands at the moment. I wonder if you had a thought of that. I don't particularly want to name the company names.
Well, that again is not a unique experience. America had it,
Yeah. Did America broke away from it eventually?
No, but at one time.
Yes. Yes.
At that stage of development in the country.
Yeah.
When you mention the name J.P. Morgan,
Rockefeller,
some more, and Carnegie.
Yeah. Yeah.
And many others. Many others. They always had monopolies. J.P. Morgan, and they wanted to take their monopolistic power.
Right.
Until you have the antitrust law much later.
Yeah.
Aristocrats had the major ownership of land. So I think to me that is and it may happen to in the Western world 200 years ago, 100 years ago. It was happening here in the past, let's say 50 years. So to me, it's not right, it's not proper. But here again, you have to understand the circumstances, because up to the reign of King Rama VI, there was no capital in Thailand. That's why the king had to decide to set up the Siam Cement.
Right.
And Bangkok, at that time, it was called Book Club, which later on became Siam Commercial Bank. There was no capital. All the capitals were in the hands of aliens, be they Chinese, be they Westerns.
Yeah.
And King Rama V felt that the Thai people should get involved. But the Thais were mostly employees or rice farmers. There was no capital. So he provided his own fund, not a state fund, his own personal fund, to set up Siam Cement and Book Club. That was a start. And later on, of course, more aliens had become naturalized Thais, had become real Thais in a way. But they still had the power, they still had that control. So our so-called capitalistic system is weighted in favor of the families. Concession, whether they get concessions or monopolies or whatever, and they hang on to this power. And I think in our country, when you talk about monopoly of power, not only in the commercial sense of the word, but also in the political sense, even in politics, there is definitely a monopoly of power. So, and I think these defects need to be corrected. I don't think any country would be able to get rid of the top rich. It happened it exists in America, in Britain, in India, in Japan, in China. But it's there. This is part of the capitalist system. You have to pay the price. You have to pay. The point is that the discrepancy in Thailand is too large,
too wide.
So you need to put into law measures which would encourage those who have no business power to be empowered.
Yeah.
They need encouragement, financial, otherwise. And I think the rich, but you can't have a country when 1% of the top of the hierarchy owns 60% of the wealth of the country.
Right.
But I'm not surprised if that kind of disparity is worse than in India or in.
Probably not.
But it happens in every country, and it comes to the core principles of governance.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about the election. For the past 10 years, I have sort of moderated my view, and I see less and less importance of general elections. Yes, it has to be, but if it's going to be an essential part of a true democracy, the elections have to be free and fair. I cannot see that happening in Thailand as yet. Whereas when I brought in this subject matter about governance, I start speaking on governance 10, 15 years ago. Because if you adhere to the principles of governance, you would be nearer to true democracy than elections, parliament, political parties, government. So I use the term democratic governance.
Yeah.
And I don't remember that anybody, not even in the Western world, anybody used that term when I first used it over 10 years ago. But nowadays, it's being used now.
Yeah.
So I think that instead of focusing only on elections, yes, you still have elections, but put more weight, much greater weight on governance, on transparency, on accountability, on inclusiveness, on participation, on justice for all, on more equality.
Right.
In rights, in justice, in distribution of wealth. But these are essential things.
Absolutely. I mean, you said something there that I thought really hit the nail. The big companies are supporting the political parties, and they change with the wind, and they support everyone. So it's almost perpetual. No matter who's in power, they're kind of working all together on something. Somehow we need to have, or any country, I guess, needs to have. You need to break that bond between big business and government, because otherwise it becomes.
You have to, and countries try to do that, but I think I'm not being critical, but I think I have been making an observation. I question in my mind whether the United States is really a democracy. Well, it's not run by the Congress or by the administration. It's run by Wall Street. I remember when I was stationed in America, Khrushchev was invited to come to the States. At that time, he started, the three or two. Oh,
right.
I forget the Russian words. Perestroika.
Perestroika was the one that Gorbachev got.
Yeah,
famous
Gorbachev.
for, yeah.
That was after. But when Khrushchev came, the economy was in a mess, and the Americans wanted to show the Russian president their wealth, particularly their national wealth, their resources, and their capitalist system. So he was taken to Iowa, whatever, to see the farmland, the wheat growing area. He was taken to Texas to show certain aspects of the American way of life. He was brought to New York. Harriman, former governor of New York, arranged a very good, nice party. Some 50 guests, many from Wall Street, many from the media, many from farming belt or whatever. And of course, Rockefeller was there, everybody Ford was there. And he was sort of making a welcome speech. And he just wanted to bring up the values of democracy, the values of the election, blah, 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 blah. And at the end, after he ended his speech, Khrushchev asked, "You mean you have democracy in your country?" When there was a competition between a Rockefeller and a Ford.
So that's,
and at the moment, to run for a congressional seat or a Senate seat for president, you spend tens of millions of dollars.
right.
That is dollar democracy. And the lobbyists still control the big companies still control the Congress. Because the members of the Congress depend on just like in Thailand too.
Yeah.
Members of Parliament depend on Japan. Huh? Even in Britain itself. Is it a democracy?
We've had a lot of prime ministers in the
when
last few
people
years.
lied repeatedly in order to bring about Brexit.
Yes, there's no perfect system, is there?
So I think that the Westerners should pipe down a bit on invoking the democratic and human rights values.
Well, I would put human rights maybe on a different platform to democracy, perhaps.
Human rights. Look at Britain's and America 100 years ago, 200 years ago. The slave trade.
Yeah.
The Opium War.
Yeah.
That's why I coined a phrase. I said, the Americans never learn, the Irish never forget, and the English never remember.
Okay. When you look back on those different aspects of your career, are there any things that you really regret doing or wished you'd have done differently? Or can you look back and say, I did what I did and I stand by it all? And what's next for Khun Anand? What plans do you have for the coming years?